The twin miracle. The price of cowardice. He left her because doctors told him she was infertile. 2 years later, he saw her with twins, and his world shattered. Do you believe in miracles born from pain? Smash the like button now. If you think life always finds a way, and comment what you would have done in Izzy's place. Chapter 1. The chill of a diagnosis, Isabel. Izzy Hayes sat silently in the cold London medical office, her hands tightly clenched in her lap. Her knuckles were white, and the fluorescent ceiling light hummed softly. The air smelled of antiseptic and paper, and time stretched endlessly between the moment the doctor walked in and the moment she finally spoke. Her voice was clinical, calm, using words like insufficient function, low probability, and then the word that hit Izzy like a punch to the chest, infertile. She didn't cry. Not immediately. She just sat there, mechanically, her face pale as her heartbeat echoed in her ears. When she walked out into the gray afternoon light, everything around her felt unreal. Cars passed, people talked on phones, children laughed in the distance. The world kept spinning while hers had just stopped. She had always dreamed of being a mother. That dream now felt like a cruel joke. Chapter 2. The cruelty of a goodbye. When she finally reached her flat in Notting Hill, Ethan Sterling, her boyfriend of 2 years, was home early. Dressed in an impeccable white shirt, he stood by the kitchen island with a glass of whiskey in one hand and his phone in the other. The golden evening light made his blue eyes look colder than usual. "You're home early," he said. Without much on. Izzy didn't answer right away. She slowly took off her coat, folded it with shaking hands, and placed it on the back of a chair. Then she spoke, her voice calm and firm, yet fragile. "I went to the doctor today." Ethan looked up. "How curious, man." She took a deep, steadying breath. "They told me I'm infertile. I can't have children." There was a long pause. Ethan stared at her, his face unreadable. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't move closer. He simply processed the words as if they were bad business news. Distant, unemotional, cold. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he put down his glass with a soft clink, picked up his jacket, and walked toward the door. "That changes things," he said bluntly. "I'm sorry." And with that, he left. The door closed behind him with a silent finality that resonated louder than any argument. Izzy remained frozen, staring at the closed door. When she finally collapsed to the floor, tears fell in heavy, uncontrollable waves. Not just for the man who walked out, but for the future she believed had just been stolen from her. Chapter 3. The canvas of pain. The following days faded into a silent, painful fog. Izzy stayed inside, barely speaking, barely moving, wrapped in a blanket that did nothing to warm her. Ethan never called, never texted. It was as if she had been erased from his life as easily as he had walked out the door. She returned to her sketchbook, not to work, but to survive. Slowly, her drawings changed. Abstract expressions of pain evolved into softer, more hopeful representations of motherhood and transformation. Her art became the only language she had the strength to speak aloud. Chapter 4. The unthinkable suspicion. A week later, she forced herself out. She sat in a corner cafe, watching the world continue without her. That realization hurt, but it also helped. Maybe the world wouldn't stop for her pain, but maybe, finally, she wouldn't stop for it either. That night, something strange happened. As she brushed her teeth, her stomach lurched, and a wave of nausea hit her hard. It must be stress. But a flicker of doubt crept in, uninvited. Over the next few days, the nausea didn't disappear. Her breasts were tender. She was exhausted, even after hours of sleep. She told herself it was depression. Finally, her best friend, Chloe, burst into the flat, armed with groceries and sheer determination. Izzy finally broke down in Chloe's arms. Chloe made soup, cleaned the kitchen, and anchored Izzy with her presence. That night, after yet another wave of nausea, Chloe leaned in and asked softly, "Izzy, is there any chance you could be pregnant?" Izzy laughed bitterly. "I'm infertile, remember?" But Chloe didn't laugh. "Are you sure?" It was the first time Izzy realized she wasn't. Not really. Just one diagnosis delivered in one sterile office by one doctor who barely looked at her. If you identify with the feeling of having to start over, comment rebirth, and don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 5. 2 lines, 1 destiny. The next morning, Izzy stood barefoot in her bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test monitor. Her fingers trembled. She told herself it was just to rule it out. She opened the box with rigid hands. Finally, holding her breath, she took the test. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, waiting for the longest minutes of her life. When the timer softly beeped, she didn't move. Then, she walked to the sink, her eyes fixed on the test. 2 lines. Her heart stopped. She blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks. But the lines remained clear, impossible to deny. She was pregnant. Tears streamed down her face. These were not the messy tears of grief, but something different. Soft, overwhelming, miraculous. She was stunned by the silent wonder that had taken root inside her. Chapter 6. The Double Miracle. That same day, she booked an appointment at a different clinic. She needed certainty. When the new doctor moved the wand over her abdomen, searching the screen for answers, seconds passed. Then, the faint, unmistakable sound of one heartbeat filled the room, and then another. Izzy's eyes flew open. "There are 2, the doctor said, smiling. "Were you expecting twins?" Izzy covered her mouth again. 2 heartbeats, 2 lives, inside her. It was more than a miracle. It was everything she thought she had lost forever. When she left the clinic, she clutched the ultrasound image like the most precious thing she had ever owned. She didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. Chapter 7. The Art of Motherhood. The following months were a quiet awakening. Izzy's art shifted from abstract expressions of pain to softer, more hopeful representations of motherhood and transformation. Her work matured, and she shared some of it online. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from women who felt understood. Chloe became her rock, helping her set up the nursery, soft sage green walls, and 2 side-by-side cribs. In her 7th month, Izzy received an unexpected email from a small gallery in central London. A curator had seen her work and wanted to include several pieces in a local exhibition focused on motherhood and identity. Izzy agreed. On the opening night, Izzy wore a flowing cream dress that gently embraced her rounded belly. She watched quietly as people stopped before her work. It wasn't fame or money she felt. It was something deeper. Connection. Chapter 8. The Return of the Shadow. Less than 2 weeks from her due date, Izzy walked slowly through Regent's Park. She sat on a bench near the fountain. It was then that her eyes landed on a tall figure across the path. Dressed in a tailored coat, Ethan Sterling was standing by the edge, talking on his phone. Her body froze. The world narrowed into a tunnel of sound and memory. He looked up. Their eyes met. He froze. The call ended. Ethan began walking toward her, slowly at first, then faster as he recognized her face. He stopped a few feet away, unsure how close he was allowed to get. "Izzy," he said, almost disbelieving. "You're pregnant!" She didn't respond. She looked at him with an expression that held no anger, but no welcome. "Is it mine?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly on the last word. "They are," she answered calmly, a hand resting protectively on her belly. "Twins. They'll be here soon." He sat beside her, staring blankly at the fountain. "I didn't know," he said. After a moment, "No one told me." "No, you didn't ask," she replied, not with bitterness, but with the simple truth. You left, and I didn't chase you. You thought I couldn't. I was scared. I handled it badly. Yes, you did, she said quietly. But I'm not here for apologies. I made peace with your absence. They are my daughters, Ethan. I carried them alone, and we will raise them if necessary. But now you have a choice. Not for me, for them. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something shatter behind his blue eyes. She carefully stood up. He instinctively reached to help her, and she allowed it, just for balance. I'm not asking for anything, she said. But if you truly want to be part of this, you must show up, not with words, but with presence. Then she walked away, leaving him standing beneath the amber light of the trees, with only the weight of the future he still might have a chance to fight for. Have you ever wondered if people can truly change? Comment your opinion, and whether you think Ethan deserves a second chance, and don't forget to like. Chapter 9. The Rebirth in the Hospital. At dawn, the first contraction hit. Izzy called Chloe, then the hospital. The hours passed in a blur of pressure, effort, and sweat. When the first cry filled the room, followed by the second shortly after, Izzy felt her soul exhale for the first time in years. The nurses placed both babies on her chest, two perfect little girls, Olivia and Maya. Izzy sobbed, overwhelmed. She had done it, alone. She had grown two human beings from a place that once felt empty. A nurse knocked gently before entering. You have a visitor? She said softly. A man. He says his name is Ethan Sterling. Izzy froze. Finally, she said, let him in. Ethan entered the room. He was nothing like the man who had abandoned her in silence. He looked vulnerable. His eyes nervously searched until they landed on her. Then, slowly, they dropped to the two bassinets. He approached cautiously. They're beautiful, he said. His voice cracking. She watched him. He leaned closer to the bassinets, gently studying the girls as if they were rare, delicate artifacts. I don't know what to say, he admitted. I've been thinking about what I would say if this moment came, and now I'm here, and nothing feels sufficient. They don't need your words, she said softly. They need consistency, presence, patience. He sighed slowly. I know. I can't ask for anything. I just want to try. Even if you don't forgive me. I want to earn a place in their lives. She gestured toward a chair. Sit, but don't make promises you're not ready to keep. He sat in silence, and for a long time, they said nothing at all. Chapter 10. The Honest Commitment. The following months were a whirlwind of night feeds, diapers, and stolen naps. Izzy adapted to motherhood instinctively. Ethan kept coming, every day. He didn't bring flowers or grand gifts. Instead, he brought questions. He wanted to learn how to hold them, feed them, and recognize the different types of cries. He didn't try to impress or take control. He simply asked to be useful. Izzy permitted it, cautiously. She watched him, looking for signs of inconsistency, waiting for the moment he would walk out again. But he didn't. He took the night shifts, learned to deal with colic, and cleaned spit up from his expensive shirts without complaint. Day after day, he showed up. 3 months later, Izzy found herself in the kitchen at sunset. Ethan was quietly assembling a new baby bouncer in the living room. She heard him humming again, a tuneless melody, and a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. That evening, they sat on the sofa. She offered him a glass of wine. You're different, she said. Not just how you act, but who you are. I feel different, Ethan said. Being with them, with you, has changed everything. Why didn't you come back sooner? She asked, the question she had carried like a stone in her chest. He looked down at his hands. Because I was ashamed. I thought I didn't deserve to reappear, and I feared that if I did, you wouldn't even open the door. I didn't expect you to come back, she said, and I didn't plan for you to stay, but you did. Ethan put down his glass and moved closer to her. I don't expect a second chance, Izzy, but I would give anything to build something better than the first. She wasn't ready to erase the past, but she was ready for something more. Then stay, she said softly. Not just for them. For real. A few weeks later, on the girl's 4-month birthday, Izzy hosted a small gathering in the park. Olivia and Maya slept soundly beside them. Ethan pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box. I know this isn't a traditional moment, he said, and I know I have so much more to prove. But I also know this is the clearest I've ever felt in my life. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my days making up for the ones I lost. He opened the box. A simple, honest ring. I'm not asking for a perfect future, just the opportunity to build a real one. With you. Izzy looked at the ring, then at the man beside her, and finally at her daughters, sleeping with their fists clenched. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to protect herself from what she wanted. She took the box and whispered, "Then let's start over." And in the soft glow of that golden afternoon, with the scent of wildflowers in the air and the sound of tiny breaths beside them, they did. Reflection and final call to action. The story of Isabel Hayes and Ethan Sterling is proof that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who is willing to be real. Izzy didn't wait to be saved. She rebuilt herself from scratch, transforming heartbreak into strength and silence into purpose. Ethan returned, humbled and ready to prove his worth, not with grand gestures, but with presence and patience. Their reunion isn't based on forgetting the pain, but on overcoming it together. The twins, Olivia and Maya, born of a miracle Izzy was told she'd never have, are the living symbol that life can bloom in the spaces where everything once felt lost. This ending doesn't promise a flawless future, but something more important. A future built on truth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that chooses to stay. Thank you for following this incredible story. If it moved you, subscribe and share this video to honor the power of second chances. Chapter 11. The Daily Test of Trust. Thu Thuk Long Tin Hang Ngay. The engagement didn't erase the 4 months of silent abandonment. Their life together became an intensive study in rebuilding trust, and Izzy was the meticulous professor. They moved into a beautiful, spacious house in Richmond, close to a large park. But the luxury of the house was secondary to the daily accountability. Ethan didn't wear the engagement ring. He wore a new watch, a constant reminder of the time he had to earn back. Izzy's scrutiny was intense, particularly when Ethan returned to his investment firm. I need to know your schedule, not for control, but for transparency, Izzy told him firmly. If you are late, you call. If you have a crisis, you communicate. The old life of self-containment is over. Ethan accepted the terms without protest. He understood that every canceled meeting, every early departure from the office to take a crying baby, was a brick laid in the foundation of trust. He learned to delegate, to prioritize the urgent cries of his daughters over the urgent demands of the market. One evening, a major financial crisis erupted. Ethan had a crucial, unscheduled late-night call with clients in Hong Kong. Izzy, overwhelmed by colic and sleep deprivation, watched him take the call from the spare room. Later, she found him in the nursery, holding a wailing Olivia. It was a disaster, Ethan admitted, exhausted. I lost millions in the last hour, Izzy. Did you hide it? She asked softly, watching him rock their daughter. No, I lost the money, but I told my partners the truth. My priority is here tonight. I rescheduled the follow-up for the morning. Izzy walked over and gently touched his shoulder. The money can be earned back, Ethan. The trust cannot. Do you think Izzy's firm conditions and Ethan's commitment to presence are a realistic model for healing after betrayal? Comment your opinion. Chapter 12. The Lie Exposed. As the twins approached their first birthday, Izzy insisted on seeing a specialist for a definitive, second opinion on her infertility diagnosis. It was a final step she needed for her own peace of mind. Ethan, though worried, fully supported her. The appointment was clinical and thorough. After reviewing the initial reports and conducting new scans, the specialist, Dr. Anya Sharma, walked into the room with a puzzled expression. "Mrs. Hayes," Dr. Sharma began, "your initial diagnosis was incorrect. Based on these advanced scans and blood work, there is absolutely no anatomical or hormonal reason for infertility. In fact, your ovarian function is robust." Izzy and Ethan stared at the doctor in stunned silence. "I believe," Dr. Sharma continued, examining the old report, "that the previous doctor misread the initial hormone panel, possibly confusing the temporary stress markers with a permanent condition. You were never infertile." The relief was physical, but the revelation was a shock. Izzy looked at Ethan. He had left her not because he was scared of a pregnancy, but because he was scared of a life without one, based on a lie. That night, alone in their living room, Izzy confronted him, holding the original report. "You left me based on a mistake," she whispered, her voice tight with residual pain. "You let me grieve the loss of a future that was always possible." "I know," Ethan admitted, tears in his eyes. "But Izzy, the lie was about me, not you. I left because I was obsessed with the perfect life. I wanted the perfect career, the perfect wife, and the perfect 2 children, neatly planned. When the doctor told me the future was imperfect, I ran from the commitment required for the imperfect reality." He knelt before her. "The miracle wasn't that you got pregnant, Izzy. The miracle was that you re-entered my life and forced me to confront the flaw in my own character. That diagnosis exposed my cowardice. I don't love you because you gave me daughters. I love you because you allowed me to heal the part of myself that was incapable of loving anything that wasn't perfect." Izzy looked at her husband, seeing the raw truth. The lie had hurt, but it ultimately revealed the depths of his change. She reached out and pulled him into a fierce, healing embrace. The pain of the past was real, but the future they were building was more so. Final call to action. A future built on truth. This chapter reveals that the greatest obstacle wasn't the diagnosis, but the fear of imperfection. If you believe Ethan's honesty and vulnerability truly earn him forgiveness, share this video now. Comment below. Now that the diagnosis is proven false, should Izzy and Ethan try for a 3rd child, or focus solely on Olivia and Maya? Your support helps us tell stories of transformation. Tuyệt vội, tôi rất vui vì bạn vẫn muốn tiếp tục khám phá những chi tiết sâu sắc hơn trong câu chuyện này, đặc biệt sau tiết lộ lớn đó. Để tiếp nối một cách ý nghĩa, tôi sẽ tập trung vào việc củng cố lại lời hứa của họ dựa trên sự thật và thử thách gia đình đầu tiên của họ. Tôi sẽ tiếp tục với phong cách tiếng Anh lôi cuốn, tuân thủ các quy tắc bạn đã đặt ra. The Twin Miracle, The Vow of the Imperfect Future. Chapter 13. The Vow of the Imperfect. The revelation that Izzy had never been infertile was a shock, but ironically, it cemented their foundation in a way nothing else could have. The false diagnosis had forced Ethan to face his deepest flaw, his fear of imperfection, and he had passed the test. 2 months later, they stood before a judge in a simple, elegant civil ceremony. This wedding was not about proving love. It was about affirming their choice based on the absolute truth. During the vows, Ethan spoke from the heart, discarding the prepared script. "Izzy," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I am not promising you a perfect life. I am not promising you a life without problems, because I now know that would be a lie. I promise you one thing: transparency. I promise to communicate my fears, to confront my flaws, and to never again run from the beautiful, messy, anti-imperfect reality we have built." Izzy, looking radiant in her simple white gown, slipped the honest ring onto his finger. "I promise you my honesty, Ethan. I promise to challenge you, to hold you accountable, and to always remind you that our greatest strength is the courage we found in our weakest moments." Their wedding photos were filled with authentic, unguarded joy. Olivia giggling while grabbing Ethan's tie, Maya sleeping soundly in Chloe's arms, and Izzy and Ethan looking at each other, fully seen and fully accepted. Chapter 14. The Crisis of the Unplanned. Their happiness was tested 6 months later when an uninvited complication from the past resurfaced: Ethan's family. Ethan had always kept his distance from his parents, who embodied the same rigid standards of success and perfection he had struggled to escape. They had been absent during the girl's birth and the wedding, viewing Izzy and the unplanned family as a distraction from Ethan's career track. Now, Ethan's father, Mr. Sterling Sr., called an emergency family dinner. "Ethan," his father began, reviewing his son's recent performance, "your investment returns are down 15% this quarter. Your focus is compromised. You need to get your priorities straight. This domestic situation," he gestured dismissively toward Izzy, "is impacting the legacy." Izzy stood up calmly, facing the patriarch who once terrified her. "Mr. Sterling, the only thing impacting Ethan's legacy is the outdated belief that success is measured solely by profit. He has built a life of integrity, something money can't buy." Mr. Sterling ignored her, focusing his cold gaze on his son. "You need to put your life back on track. We suggest you send the twins to an au pair school in Switzerland and return to your 16-hour workdays." Ethan, however, was no longer the frightened man who had run from a diagnosis. He stood beside his wife, his spine straight. "Father," Ethan said, his voice firm and unwavering, "my priority is no longer the market. It is my family. My daughters are not a distraction. They are my center. And my wife is my partner, not a commodity you can dismiss." He delivered the final defining blow. "I've tendered my resignation from the firm. I'm starting my own fund. One based on ethical, sustainable investments. I will never sacrifice my life for a spreadsheet again. And if that means forfeiting the family name and inheritance, then I accept that price." Izzy watched her husband, her heart swelling with an immense pride that dwarfed any emotion she had ever felt. He had chosen her truth over his legacy. Final call to action. The price of true success. Ethan's ultimate choice, walking away from the inheritance he once craved, proves his total transformation. If you believe he made the right decision, leave a comment with the word integrity to celebrate his choice. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 15. The New Empire. Ethan's resignation sent shockwaves through the financial world. But his new venture, Ethel Partners, named after an old English word for noble or principle, became an immediate success. He focused on sustainable, socially responsible investments, a clear moral contrast to his family's ruthless, profit-driven legacy. The irony was not lost on the business community. Ethan, freed from the chains of his family's expectations, was more focused and successful than ever before. His clients were drawn not just to his talent, but to his story of redemption and integrity. Lila, Izzy, was his silent, powerful partner. She continued her art, now creating pieces that celebrated the balance of life and work. She used the success of her art to establish a women's resilience fund, investing in business startups run by single mothers, a direct tribute to her own struggle. Their life became a beautifully orchestrated dance of purpose and parenting. Ethan worked flexible hours from their home office, always available for school runs or a quick twin crisis. Lila thrived, managing her art commissions and the fund with the same clarity she used to demand from Ethan's schedule. Olivia and Maya, now vibrant toddlers, were the central focus. They were raised in an environment where true success was measured in laughter, presence, and kindness, not in market share. Do you think the freedom from his family's financial control was the true catalyst for Ethan's massive success? Share your insights in the comments. Chapter 16. The Unexpected Letter. 5 years into their marriage, Ethan received a peculiar package delivered to the old family firm, which was then forwarded to his new office. It was a thick, legal envelope bearing the address of the clinic where Izzy had received her original, false infertility diagnosis. Inside was a letter from the head of the clinic, along with a certified copy of Izzy's initial medical file. The letter explained that the original doctor had recently passed away, and during the audit of his private files, the clinic discovered a note regarding Izzy's case. To whom it may concern, the initial infertility diagnosis for Ms. Hayes, Izzy, was incorrect. She was perfectly fertile. I regret that I rushed the preliminary reading due to personal stresses at the time. I never had the courage to correct this massive, life-altering mistake. Ethan read the note, his hands trembling. It was the confirmation of the lie they already knew, but seeing it in ink gave it finality. He looked up at Izzy, who walked in with a cup of tea. "It's about the diagnosis," he said. Handing her the letter, Izzy read it, her face calm. She looked at the paper, the source of all her initial pain, the catalyst for Ethan's flight, and the accidental trigger for their real love story. She smiled, a peaceful, accepting smile. "He never had the courage to correct it," Izzy murmured, referring to the deceased doctor. "But his mistake led to our greatest truth." She took the letter and gently put it through the paper shredder in their office. "The lie is now completely gone, Ethan," she said, taking his hand. "And all that is left is the life we chose to build on the truth." Their love story wasn't just about a second chance. It was a testament to the powerful, beautiful reality that sometimes the most devastating mistakes in life are the ones that force us onto the path of our greatest, most authentic blessings. Final call to action. What an incredible ending. If this story inspires you to seek your own authentic truth, comment below with the word authentic to celebrate their journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The soft morning light filtered through sheer white curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room, like a whispered promise of peace. Anna Collins stirred awake in the warm arms of the man she once believed was her destiny. Matthew Grayson lay asleep beside her, his strong arm draped protectively around her waist, a quiet habit that spoke volumes of tenderness. Even in sleep, he never let her go. Anna turned gently to face him, her eyes tracing the familiar lines of his face bathed in golden light. His lashes were thick and dark, his lips slightly pursed in the stillness of slumber. Something in that quiet moment made her heart race, as if she were seeing him for the very first time. 3 years earlier, they met at a design expo, where Anna had curated a stunning exhibit. Matthew, a rising tech entrepreneur, had walked up and said something she'd never forget. "The only thing that made me stop wasn't the lamp. It was the one who placed it." Just one sentence, one conversation about art, dreams, and children's books, and Anna knew her heart had fallen into a place from which it could never return. Matthew loved her wholly and without hesitation, and Anna gave him all of herself, with tenderness, fragility, and the quiet hope of a woman who once believed she didn't deserve to be loved so completely. 1 year later, they married. Their small white house by the San Francisco Bay became their sanctuary. Anna left her design firm and began illustrating children's books. a childhood dream she'd buried for years. Matthew supported her every step, placing her happiness above the chaos of boardrooms and investor meetings. Every morning, they brewed coffee together, listened to jazz, and read the paper in sunlight. On weekends, they walked in the park, took candid photos, talked for hours like there was never enough time. She once told him, "If I could frame these moments, I'd hang them in every corner of our home." But even the sweetest love stories can feel the wind before the storm. Matthew's mother, Victoria Grayson, made her first entrance during a family dinner. Her silver hair was perfectly pinned, her eyes sharp as blades. She smiled at Anna and said, "You're interesting. I don't think Matthew's ever chosen someone so simple." Her smile was velvet, but her words cut like ice. Anna smiled back, but something shifted. In that moment she knew a quiet battle had begun, not with shouting or slamming doors, but with silent glances, subtle comments, and cracks that begin in glass long before the shatter. Anna had always believed that evil never arrived with thunder, but with silence, and she was right. What unraveled between her and Matthew didn't begin with a storm, but with quiet cracks, invisible to the untrained eye. After the first dinner with Victoria, something in the air changed. Matthew didn't say anything directly, but Anna could feel a subtle shift. He seemed more cautious when talking about his mother. Once, when Anna made a light-hearted joke about Victoria's sharp remarks, he only smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. Anna felt like she had entered a contest she didn't know the rules to. She tried harder, at everything, to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, but the harder she tried, the more inadequate she felt. Victoria's presence became more frequent, and with each visit came another offhand comment, a glance too long, a question that wasn't quite a question. "You're very kind," Victoria said one afternoon over tea. "But kindness isn't always what a man needs to thrive in this world." Anna smiled. That night, she cried in the bathroom. And then came the night everything broke. On the very evening Anna had planned to tell Matthew she was pregnant. She'd kept the secret for nearly a week, not out of fear but hope. She wanted the perfect moment. A quiet evening, soft candlelight, his favorite potato soup, and a small note she'd placed inside a children's book. Our next chapter begins with 2 tiny heartbeats. But Victoria had other plans. That evening, Anna received a text from Matthew. "Mom's dropping by. I'll be late. Don't prepare anything." She sighed but smiled. It could wait one more day. Victoria arrived shortly after, but she wasn't alone. With her was a man Anna didn't recognize, David, introduced vaguely as an old family friend. Victoria said she had to make a quick call and insisted Anna and David have some tea. Anna, slightly unsettled, remained polite. She poured tea, made small talk. David was friendly, though something about him felt rehearsed. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. A few minutes later, Victoria returned and chaos exploded. "Matthew," she cried, voice trembling. Matthew stepped through the front door to a scene frozen in tension. Anna and David sitting together, a teacup shattered on the floor, and Victoria standing between them, her face pale and stricken. She tried something," Victoria gasped. "She locked me in the kitchen, and when I got out, I found this." "What?" Anna blinked. I didn't do anything. What are you talking about?" "Anna, you locked my mother in the kitchen?" Matthew's voice was sharp, clipped. "No, I didn't, I just, she turned to David. "Tell him." David looked down, silent. "She told me I could stay if I wanted," he murmured. "I think it was just a misunderstanding." "No," Anna screamed, "you're lying." Matthew said nothing. He stared at her with eyes she barely recognized. Cold, distant. After a long silence, he turned and walked into his study. When he came back, he was holding a file. "I've already signed," he said. "I hope you do too." Anna stood frozen, her world cracking open. She wanted to scream that she was pregnant, that this was all a setup, that Victoria had manipulated everything. But her throat locked. Matthew left that night without looking back. Victoria stepped close, whispering as she pulled the door shut. "I told you he was never yours." New York. The city that never sleeps, where everyone runs toward ambition, escape, or a new beginning. For Anna Collins, it wasn't a destination. It was a refuge. She didn't choose it because it felt close, but because it was far enough for no one to remember she had once been Matthew Grayson's wife. She arrived in New York visibly pregnant. In the biting cold of winter, she dragged her suitcase through Union Square, her tears long since dried. She didn't need pity. She needed a place to give birth, to survive. She found a small apartment in Brooklyn, third floor, creaky wooden stairs, but it had a window that caught sunlight, and that was enough. She gave birth to twin boys on a gusty March morning, Eli and Evan. No family, no one to cut the cords except a kind nurse from the clinic. But the moment she held them, Anna knew she wasn't alone anymore. Her days became a blur of feedings, lullabies, deadlines. She drew children's illustrations during nap time, sent drafts by email, paid rent month to month, and kept a steady smile when her sons asked about Dad. Anna picked up her pen again. She submitted work to indie publishers. A small press in Manhattan fell in love with her tender, soulful lines, especially a sketchbook titled The Bear Who Waited, inspired by Evan waiting for Eli in the ER during a fever scare. Anna wasn't famous, but she had readers. Not rich, but she and her boys had enough. Enough warmth, enough food, enough love. Their tiny apartment was covered in artwork, by Anna, by Eli, by Evan. The once blank walls now held forests, oceans, castles, and a figure called the missing father. Eli and Evan grew fast. They had everything but a dad. Their steel gray eyes and thoughtful stares reminded Anna too often of a man they had never met, but she had never forgotten. Anna didn't lie, but she didn't tell everything. When they asked, "Who is our dad?" she would simply say, "Someone Mom loved very much." Eli would think for a moment, "Did he love you back?" Anna would smile gently, "He did, but sometimes love gets lost in all the wrong things." Each night she told them stories, her own creations, tales of a kingdom broken by misunderstandings, a father cursed to forget, and a mother lighting the way with nothing but heart and hope. Every birthday they would ask, "Does he know we exist?" She would hold them tight. Maybe not yet, but one day he will. She believed that. Even if she no longer hoped in Matthew as a man, she believed he had a right as a father to know. And then it came. One late autumn afternoon, Anna received a heavy envelope from an unknown address. Inside, a wedding invitation. Matthew Grayson and Claudia Mercer. Ceremony at St. Michael's Cathedral, San Francisco. Anna stood still. After 8 years, she hadn't heard his name. Not once. At that moment, Evan, reaching for markers, pulled the card from her hand. "Grayson," he read aloud. "Mom, that's the name from our bedtime books." Ellie asked slowly, "Is this our dad?" Anna didn't answer, but her silence was loud. Evan said, "I don't know if he's good or bad, but I want to meet him. Just once." Anna sank to the floor, her head on her son's shoulder. She knew. She couldn't hide anymore. "All right," she whispered. "We'll go, so he'll know you were always here." 2 days after receiving the wedding invitation, Anna still hadn't decided what to do. The card sat open on the dining table, untouched since. Every time she passed it, her heart skipped a beat. She'd thought about throwing it away. But Eli and Eben, sensing something, always placed it neatly back in the center, like a quiet reminder, "We want to meet our father." Anna couldn't blame them. How could she, when they'd never heard his voice, never once been held in his arms? She had given them everything, except one truth they deserved. That night, after the boys were asleep, Anna picked up the invitation again. "Matthew Grayson and Claudia Mercer cordially invite you to their wedding at St. Michael's Cathedral, San Francisco, December 15th. Claudia Mercer. Anna had heard the name. A high-powered attorney, daughter of Judge Meredith Mercer, the kind of woman Victoria Grayson would have chosen without hesitation. Perfect, polished, untouchable. Anna stared at Matthew's name, bold and sharp. She wondered, did he ever think of her? Did he know about the twins? Or had Victoria wrapped the truth in velvet lies and locked it away? The next day, she took the boys for a walk through Central Park. The air was crisp, the sunlight clear. Evan ran ahead while Eli held her hand and whispered, "Mom, would you be mad if we want to meet Dad?" Anna knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "No, baby, I wouldn't be mad. I'm just scared. Your dad may not be ready." "Then we'll go," Evan chimed in. "If he's not ready, we'll help him get ready." Anna laughed, a sound caught between joy and sorrow. She made her decision. They would go to San Francisco, not to stop a wedding, not to cause pain, but to speak the truth, once and for all. Whatever happened afterward was Matthew's choice, but he couldn't say he never knew. They flew to San Francisco on December 13th, 2 days before the ceremony. She rented a small place on Twin Peaks overlooking the city. That night they sat by the window looking at the lights. Anna said, "Tomorrow we go to the cathedral. But remember, we don't go to fight. We go to speak the truth. Okay?" Eli nodded. "What if he doesn't believe us?" Anna squeezed his hand. "Then we'll show him." "Are you scared?" Evan asked. She looked out at the city that once held all her dreams. "Yes, but I'm more afraid that he'll never know you exist." The morning of December 15th was cold and misty. Anna dressed the boys in matching navy suits. She wore a long gray dress, hair in a low bun, no makeup, but her eyes carried a light that had been lost for 8 years. They arrived at St. Michael's just as the ceremony began. Choir singing, guests seated, heads turned as they walked down the center aisle. Anna held their hands. She said nothing, neither did anyone else. Matthew stood at the altar in a black tuxedo. When he saw them, his face drained of color. Claudia turned. Her expression crumbled as her eyes landed on the boys. Mirror images of Matthew. Anna stopped halfway down the aisle. Evan let go of her hand, stepped forward, and said clearly, "Dad." A ripple ran through the cathedral. Matthew froze. Eli followed his brother. "Dad, I'm Eli. This is Evan. Mom said you didn't know, but now you do." No one moved. No one breathed. Anya walked up beside them. Her eyes met Matthew's. "I'm not here to stop your wedding. I came to tell you, you left more than me behind. You left them. You deserve to know, and they deserve to know you." Victoria Grayson slowly stood, her face white as stone. Matthew stepped back. His hand covered his mouth. Tears brimmed in his eyes. Claudia turned. "Do you know them?" Matthew shook his head. I didn't, I swear." Evan looked up at Anna. "Can we go now?" Anna nodded. She turned to leave, but as she passed Claudia, she paused. "I hope you'll be happy, but if you plan to marry a man, make sure he has nothing left unresolved." Claudia didn't reply. Her eyes were dry but red. Outside, the cold wind hit Anna's cheeks. But for the first time in years, her chest felt light. Behind her, chaos burst inside the cathedral. Someone shouted Matthew's name. Then came footsteps. Anna turned. Matthew ran after them, tie loose, eyes filled with tears. "Anna, is it true? Are they mine?" Anna didn't speak. Eli and Evan turned to face him. Matthew dropped to his knees, arms open. Evan stepped forward, without hesitation. Eli followed, and then Anna. And for the first time in 8 years, her family stood in the same place. No one left St. Michael's after Anna and the boys appeared. The wedding was no longer the center. The entire room sank into a strange silence, not one of reverence, but of shock, of unspoken questions echoing in the vaulted ceiling. Matthew remained kneeling, arms wide open. Evan and Eli embraced him, drawn into a bubble where time melted. 8 years collapsed into a single moment of blood-deep connection. Anna stood a few feet away, watching. She didn't cry. She clenched her hands tightly, as if letting go would make it all fall apart. A soft sob broke the quiet. "Claudia!" She didn't scream, didn't throw anything. She simply stood still, her gaze shifting. "Anna, Matthew, the boys." Then she turned and walked out of the cathedral. No one stopped her. No one dared. Anna watched her go. She didn't hate Claudia. She hadn't come to reclaim anything. She had come to tell the truth as a mother. Matthew slowly rose. His voice trembled. "Is it real?" Anna nodded. "They're mine?" "Yes, and you never told me because you didn't believe me," she said gently. "Because I left with nothing but the silence you chose." He stepped forward, then stopped. "I didn't know. Mother said, 'You betrayed me.' I believed her." Anna looked at him. "Because it was easier to believe the lie than listen to me." The air thickened. Guests sat in stunned stillness. Except for Victoria. She stood now, pale and shaken, her once commanding presence cracked. She stepped into the aisle. "Anna?" she called. Anna turned. "This isn't right," Victoria said, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't ruin a day like this." Anna said nothing. Evan tugged her sleeve. "Is she the reason Dad left us?" Anna knelt, touched his cheek. "All that matters is, I never left you. That's what's true." Matthew turned to his mother. "It was you, wasn't it?" Victoria swallowed. "I only wanted you to be happy Claudia was better." "No," he cut in. "I'm asking if you lied about Anna, about David, about everything." She hesitated. All eyes in the cathedral bore into her. "I lost a wife, 8 years, 2 children, because of you." "You don't understand. You never let me love anyone but you," Matthew said quietly. Victoria trembled, then stepped back, legs shaky. She looked at Anna, then the twins, her eyes hollow. For the first time, Anna didn't see a powerful woman. She saw someone, old, alone, who had just realized she'd destroyed the very thing she thought she was protecting. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered, but no one accepted it. It was too late. For the first time, the matriarch stood not as a force, but as a shadow of what power could never save. Emma stood, holding Evan and Eli close. She didn't want to stay another second. "Let's go," she whispered. Matthew followed. "Please, wait." "Don't go." Anna turned. "I don't know what you want, Matthew." "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to be their father, to start again, if you let me." She looked at him, then at the boys. "You didn't choose me when I needed you most," she whispered. "This time, choose them." He nodded. "I will, whether you give me another chance or not." 3 days later, Matthew came to the small apartment she'd rented. No flowers, no ring, no begging, just one promise. "I'd like to see them every week. Take them to the park, help with homework. Not for you, for them. They deserve a father." Anna agreed, not because she had forgiven him, but because she believed every child had the right to know where they came from, honestly. And so, from an unfinished wedding, began a new chapter. Not of romance, but of family. An imperfect family, but a real one. A week after the interrupted wedding, Victoria Grayson had not left her grand estate in Palo Alto. Heavy velvet curtains covered every window, shutting out the sun, just as she'd spent a lifetime shutting out anything that might warm her heart. She sat motionless in an old armchair by the cold fireplace. The staff had all left. No visitors came. Calls from social circles stopped once news spread about Matthew's canceled wedding. She had once been the star of every gala, every charity luncheon, but now silence ruled her home. No laughter, no heels clicking across marble floors, no clinking teacups, only the breath of a woman slowly drowning in regret. Victoria had never imagined she would become irrelevant. But worse than being forgotten, was being abandoned by her own son. Matthew had come once, the week after. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He simply looked her in the eye and said, "You stole my family." 4 words, and they cut deeper than anything she'd ever known. After that, she never saw him again. And she was not allowed near the 2 boys, her grandsons, whom she had erased from their father's life for 8 long years. She remembered Anna's expression that day, not angry, not vengeful, just still, quiet, a verdict without a judge. Victoria no longer cried. Tears she used to believe were for the weak, but now, in this long, aching silence, she realized silence was the harsher sentence. When no one wanted to speak to her, when even her remorse had no listener, apologies lost their meaning. One afternoon, she stepped into the backyard, the rose garden that once made her proud. Most flowers had wilted, the gardener had quit. In her hand was a letter, written in trembling script. "Anna, I don't expect forgiveness, but if one day Eli and Evan are ready, please, give me a chance, just to sit with them, not as a grandmother, but as a woman who made the greatest mistake of her life. Victoria Grayson." She didn't send it, not yet. She folded the letter and placed it in a drawer where she used to keep old love letters. Beside it was a photograph of young Matthew. That boy, he was now a father. Victoria knew if she wanted to rebuild anything, the first step wasn't asking for forgiveness. It was learning how to exist as someone who no longer had a place in the center of someone else's life. She needed to relearn motherhood, or, if not that, learn, at last, how to be a human being. And while Victoria quietly faced the ruins of all she had destroyed somewhere else, Matthew was beginning a new journey. The journey to rebuild trust with his sons and the woman he once let go. Matthew Grayson didn't know how to be a father. He'd learned to manage corporations, speak before international boards, make million-dollar decisions in minutes. But standing in front of 2 8-year-olds, he felt clumsy, like someone learning to walk again. The first visit after the wedding was on a cold Sunday in Brooklyn. Anna stayed downstairs at the cafe, leaving the apartment to the 3 of them. No pressure, no terms, just a chance, and Matthew didn't want to waste it. He arrived on time, carrying 2 donuts and a children's book titled Where the River Ends, illustrated by Anna. Eli opened the door, said nothing, but didn't close it either. Evan peeked from behind his brother. Do you know how to play soccer?" Matthew smiled. "I can learn." And so they headed to the nearby park. It was still cold, the grass damp, but laughter soon echoed. Evan kicked the ball into his leg, while Eli quietly observed. Matthew didn't try to be their friend. He didn't force closeness. He just showed up. They ended the afternoon sitting on a bench. Matthew read from the book, stumbling occasionally. But Evan leaned on his shoulder, and Eli sat close by, and for the first time, Matthew didn't feel like a stranger in his own life. Over the following weeks, he came every Saturday. One weekend, they visited the museum. Another, they attended a free art class Anna found. Matthew didn't know how to paint, but he tried to draw a crocodile that looked like a camel and made the boys laugh uncontrollably. Anna watched from afar. She didn't interfere, didn't encourage or prevent. She let the children feel and decide. One evening, Eli came home and tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, today Dad didn't check his phone even once." Anna smiled. "Really?" "Yeah. He even remembered our birthday. He asked what kind of cake we like." She knelt to unclip his hair. "Did that make you happy?" Eli nodded. "It made me happy too." For the first time in years, Matthew wasn't just the man who left. He was becoming a father, trying to make things right, not through words, but through quiet, consistent action. One night, after bringing the boys home, Matthew stood at Anna's door, holding a wrinkled drawing Evan had given him. "I know I lost you, Anna," he said quietly. "But if you see that I'm trying, not to win you back, but to grow up, Then thank you for letting me do the right thing. Anna took the paper, a house with 3 people and an open door. They drew you in, she whispered. That means they're starting to let you in. Matthew nodded. He didn't say more, because he understood. Trust isn't earned through promises, it's built with patience. Spring arrived slowly in New York, as if the city was still hesitating after a long, somber winter. But in a small Brooklyn apartment, the tulips on the windowsill had bloomed, planted by Evan from seeds in January. Their bright yellow petals made the whole room feel warmer. Anna stood in the kitchen, gently stirring a pot of soup, eyes watching her sons laugh with Matthew on the balcony. It was his 14th visit, never missed, never late. This time, he brought a Lego set Eli had been dreaming about. She couldn't deny it. Matthew had changed. He was no longer the overly confident man who hid behind work and prestige. Now, he spent hours building castles, let Evan paint fake lipstick on his face during salon time, and knew every character from a cartoon series he used to ignore but could change. Undo everything that had once broken. Anna remembered too clearly the feeling of leaving that empty house years ago, hand on her swollen belly, heart tangled in grief and betrayal. She had lost so much: trust, time, and a man she thought would be her home. Now Matthew was back, not as a lover, but as a father. But would there come a day when he would choose to walk away again? One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Matthew stepped onto the balcony where Anna sat with her tea. He sat beside her, silent for a long while. Then, quietly, "I think about you every day," he said, "even when I know I don't deserve to." Anna didn't respond. "I'm not asking you to come back," he continued. "But I'll be here as long as the boys need me, and if one day you decide to move forward, with or without me, at least you'll know I didn't disappear again." She turned to face him, looked into the eyes that once made her believe in everything, and once made her question everything. "Are you sure this time you'll choose to believe me, not someone else?" she asked. Matthew nodded, without hesitation. "Then prove it. Not with words, with time." She stood and walked inside. 2 weeks later, Anna received an invitation from a London publishing house to join a 6-month project. They wanted her to collaborate with international illustrators on a dream book. The kind of opportunity she'd once let go when she became a mother, she was ready to decline. But Eli saw the email. "Go, Mom," he said. "We have Dad now." Evan chimed in. "Dad's noodles are gross, but we'll teach him." Anna laughed, then cried, not because of the offer, but because, for the first time in 8 years, she didn't feel trapped between motherhood and personal dreams. For the first time, she was allowed to choose herself. She looked at Matthew, standing at the doorway, having heard everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't plead. He simply said, "If you go, I'll stay. 6 months, a year, as long as it takes. I'll care for them like they deserve. And when you come back, whatever you decide, I'll still be here." Anna nodded. "Then I'll go." Not to escape, not to test him, but because she was finally ready to live her life, scars, hopes, and a slowly mending trust. And maybe, just maybe, healing didn't mean going back. It meant moving forward with honesty.
Stop right there and hit that subscribe button. You are about to witness a betrayal so cold, it will give you chills. Have you ever been told you're not enough? Then this story about an architect who turned her heartbreak into a billion-dollar empire is for you. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe in second chances, but only the ones you build for yourself. Part 1. The golden blood on the marble. The champagne spilled onto the white marble like golden blood. Ilara Vance felt the cold, sticky liquid reach her bare feet seconds before the words truly registered. Lucienne's voice, calm and laced with the expensive scent of deceit, hung in the perfumed air of the terrace. This was the terrace overlooking the Manhattan skyline, where she had sketched 1,000 futures, and now every syllable was a silk-wrapped blade. Chloe is... different. You understand, don't you, Alara? She comes from a world I need. Her family, her name, her everything. The crisp New York air, carrying salt from the distant harbor, and the stench of his betrayal, was a silent witness. Alara watched the lights of the city flicker, a cold, indifferent audience to her humiliation. She was wearing a simple, tailored silk dress that now felt like a shroud. Her hands trembled, not from the chill, but from a rage that was yet unnamed. She had spent 3 years building a home in the heart of a man who now looked at her with the cool detachment of someone returning a used item. "Her name?" she whispered, her voice unnaturally steady. "Is that all I'm worth, Lucienne? Less than a last name?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was his response, and the expensive perfume of another woman drifting from the living room was her final verdict. That night, Alara didn't cry. She gathered her keys, her shattered pride, and a single carry-on suitcase. As the taxi pulled her away from the life she had known, one question crystallized in her mind, a question that would change everything. What is the true value of a woman who dares to rebuild herself from the ashes? Part 2. The cracks in the glass tower. 3 years earlier, Alara Vance was a woman walking the sidewalks of Lower Manhattan with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her place. It wasn't a loud or arrogant certainty, but that silent peace that settles when dreams and reality finally speak the same language. She worked as a sustainable architecture consultant at a boutique studio in the financial district. It wasn't the highest-paying job, but it allowed her to design spaces that breathed, buildings that conversed with the city light instead of suffocating it. Lucienne Rebel, a French hedge fund manager who owned a chic art gallery in Soho, entered her life like a sudden summer storm, unannounced, but with the force of the inevitable. He wore flawlessly tailored suits that seemed a second skin and spoke 4 languages with the same captivating accent. "You are unlike the women I know," he'd told her over a late-night cocktail. "There's something about you that can't be bought or learned. It's authentic." Alara, who had grown up in a modest neighborhood in Queens, who had paid for her NYU degree with scholarships and graveyard shifts, who had built her career on talent and early mornings, believed those words like gospel. She moved into his Upper East Side penthouse 6 months later. The apartment boasted breathtaking views, light wooden floors that smelled of beeswax, and a kitchen where they prepared dinners that stretched till dawn, debating everything from urban planning to existentialism. Lucienne introduced her in his circles as "My Alara," the architect with a poet's soul. But the cracks were small, almost invisible. Like the time Lucienne's mother visited and barely addressed 3 sentences to Alara during the entire dinner. Or when he canceled his trip to Queens to meet her family, citing an unavoidable business commitment that turned out to be a private dinner with investors at a Hamptons country club. "My world is complicated, darling," Lucienne would explain, stroking her hair with a tenderness that, in retrospect, seemed the automatic gesture of calming a restless pet. "There are protocols, expectations. You understand, right?" And Alara, because love sometimes means shrinking yourself to fit into another's dream, would always nod. "What about you? Have you ever felt like you had to change who you were to be loved? Tell me in the comments below. The first real warning sign came one March night at the opening of an exhibition. A woman swept into Lucienne's gallery as if the entire space had been waiting for her. She was tall, with a bearing that spoke of riding lesson and summers in the Swiss Alps. Chloe Beaumont, heiress to a Swiss banking fortune, and Lucienne's ex-fiancé, a fact he quickly dismissed as a youthful mistake. But Alara had seen the way he looked at her, not with nostalgia, but with something far worse. Calculation, like someone reassessing a missed investment's market value. The following weeks were a slow erosion. Lucien started coming home late. His answers became distracted. Calls were taken on the balcony, conversations in French that ceased abruptly when she entered. Then came the night on the terrace, the spilled champagne, and the crushing words. Chloe had returned to New York. Chloe wanted to reignite things. And Lucien, the man who had promised a future, decided that the Beaumont name was worth more than 3 years of shared love. I'm sorry, Alara, truly, but this is bigger than us. Her family can open doors that you don't understand how this world works. Alara understood perfectly. She understood that she had been a diversion, a romantic interlude between the obligations of his social class. She understood that she had never been enough because her worth was measured not in what she was, but in what she could not provide. Pedigree, connections, the kind of capital that is inherited, not built. I want you out by tomorrow, he'd said with almost gentle cruelty. I've spoken to my lawyer. There's nothing to divide, of course, but I can give you 3 months' rent to find a place. It's fair. Fair. Alara felt something inside her shatter, not her heart, but the fundamental belief that love could overcome class. She packed silently, leaving behind the jewelry he had gifted her. Each piece now felt like a retrospective bribe. At 3 a.m., the taxi dropped her off at a cheap hotel in Chelsea. She sat on the edge of the bed, and finally, amidst the indifferent glow of the city lights, the tears came. But beneath the tears, something else was born. A cold fury, a directionless determination. She would never again need validation from anyone. She would be enough for herself. And that, she realized as the dawn tinted the sky, would be her most perfect revenge. Part 3. From the ashes of humiliation, New York loves secrets, but it loves gossip more. The news of the breakup spread through Lucien's world, that universe of galleries, investors, and rooftop parties, like ink in water. Alara knew it when the pity messages started rolling in. So sorry about you and Lucien. Always knew it wouldn't last. These men never marry outside their circle. At least you can go back to your normal life, right? Each message was a slap wrapped in fake empathy. The real blow landed 3 days later. Her boss, Montserrat, walked into her office with the expression people wear when they are about to ruin your day with pragmatism. The sustainable hotel project in the Hamptons, the contract she had secured after months of work, was canceled. The client, an investor in Lucien's circle, decided to go in a different direction. Montserrat explained, avoiding her gaze. You know how it is, Alara. In this business, relationships are everything. And after what happened with Rebel, the message was crystal clear. Associating with Alara now meant associating with a woman who had been publicly discarded. She was a liability. Alara walked back to her small rental studio, feeling invisible, like her humiliation had turned her into a ghost. The worst moment came 2 weeks later at a cultural center opening in Brooklyn. She saw them, Lucien and Chloe. Entering together with the synchronicity of a couple accustomed to being watched, Chloe saw her first, and she smiled, not a smirk of crude triumph, but a smile of pity, the kind that says, "Poor creature, you never stood a chance." Then, with the grace of a perfect ballet move, she took Lucien's arm and guided him away. He didn't even look at Alara. She held on for 20 more minutes, playing the role of the strong woman moving on. Then, she slipped out and vomited in an alley, not from alcohol, but from pure humiliation. Back in her apartment, she opened her laptop and searched for Chloe Beaumont. The results were an avalanche of society articles, Forbes mentions, and photos at charity galas. Chloe didn't just have money. She had something more dangerous, the power of irrelevance. She was so established, she didn't need to prove anything. And Ilara, with her talent and her dreams of sustainable architecture, was not a rival. She was an anecdote. That night, Ilara remembered something her grandmother had told her. The problem with hitting rock bottom, Mija, is that you only have two options: stay there or start climbing. Ilara rose, made herself a cup of strong coffee, and made a decision. She would not stay. She would not let Lucien Rebel and his aristocratic blonde define her story. She opened a blank document and wrote a single phrase: Reconstruction Plan. Ilara Vance 2.0. She added a list: update professional portfolio, seek international projects, outside the New York circle, learn a new skill that makes me invaluable, never, ever depend emotionally on anyone again. Show them all they were wrong. Do you think Ilara should stay in New York and fight, or leave the city behind? Let me know your strategy in the comments. Part 4. The Fracture Point and the Great Escape. The bathroom mirror broke by accident, or perhaps it was Ilara's fist connecting with the glass in a moment of contained rage, a buildup of weeks of rejection. It was an April morning. She had received her 5th rejection email. We appreciate your talent, Ilara, but at this time, we are looking for profiles that better align with our current client network. Translation: we don't want the baggage you're carrying. She read the email 3 times. On the 3rd, something simply gave way. The impact of her phone against the glass produced a crystalline, almost beautiful sound. The mirror fractured into a web of cracks, multiplying her reflection into 100 fragmented Ilaras. And in that moment, surrounded by broken versions of herself, she had an epiphany. She could not rebuild in New York. This city knew her too well. She had her failure tattooed on the face of every person who had seen her on Lucien's arm. She needed to disappear, to reinvent herself where no one knew who she had been. She cleaned up the broken glass. Each shard she collected was a piece of her old life she was leaving behind. She applied that same night to an intensive 6-month specialization program in bioclimatic design and circular economy in Aarhus, Denmark. The deadline was 2 weeks away. The money, saved in an account Lucien never knew about, was now her exit ticket. The acceptance email arrived 5 days later. Accepted. Ilara smiled, a small, secret smile of someone who had just found the exit door to a room she thought was locked. She resigned from her job, sold almost everything she owned, and kept only 2 suitcases of practical clothes and her work equipment. Each object left behind was one less anchor. The night before her flight, she took a final walk past Lucien's gallery. Lights were on. Through the windows, she could see elegant silhouettes and wine glasses. She paused for a moment, not out of nostalgia, but out of farewell. "Thank you," she whispered to the illuminated building. "Thank you for showing me who I never want to be again." The flight to Copenhagen left at 6 in the morning. As the plane took off and New York became a fading map of lights below, Ilara closed her eyes and visualized her future self. Stronger, wiser, whole. A woman who built her own greatness. The point of no return was behind her. Now, only the path forward remained. Part 5. The Tempering in the North. Copenhagen in May is a city of perpetual light and affectionate, cutting winds. Ilara arrived with 2 suitcases, an unyielding purpose, and 0 expectations beyond survival. The first few days were pure disorientation. The Danish language sounded like water running over stones. The specialization program was intensely absurd. 12-hour days of classes, projects, and site visits. Ilara plunged into the work like plunging into cold water. Initial shock, followed by clarifying focus. She discovered that pain could be fuel. Every time she was tempted to check Lucien's social media, she forced herself to design a mental building. Every time nostalgia threatened to paralyze her, She studied until exhaustion became her sedative. Her professors noticed. Petra, a 60-year-old Danish architect with ice-blue eyes and a steel mind, stopped her one day. "Your work is exceptional, Ilara, but there's an urgency, as if you're running from something." Ilara looked her in the eye. "I am not running. I am chasing." The transformation was molecular. She started running along the harbor, needing to feel her body as something that belonged to her. She learned basic Danish. She accepted every extra project offered to her. Her nights became canvases of CAD, renders, and thermal efficiency calculations. And a strange thing happened. She began to like the woman she was becoming. Not the soft, compliant version she had been with Lucien, but something sharper, more focused. A blade that had been tempered in the fire of humiliation and emerged stronger, not bitter. In August, she was offered a paid internship at Bjarke Ingels Group, BIG, one of Scandinavia's most prestigious studios. The interview took place in a glass and wood building that seemed to breathe. "How would you design a space for grief?" a senior partner asked. Ilara thought of her Chelsea studio, the broken mirror. "I would design it with transparency," she replied. "Glass walls that let in light, but maintain intimacy. Grief needs to be seen without being exposed. It needs space to expand without drowning. And it needs a clearly visible exit door, because hope is architecture as much as walls are." There was a silence. Then, the senior partner smiled. "You start in September." One October afternoon, while working on a museum design for Oslo, her phone vibrated. An Instagram notification. She opened the app for the first time in months. Her feed was frozen in the Lucien era. Out of impulse, she searched for his profile. There it was. Photos with Chloe. The wedding had been in July, a ceremony at a chateau in the Hamptons. Images of performative luxury. Lucien smiling that smile that had once made her heart race. She waited to feel something. Pain. Rage. Jealousy. Instead, she felt nothing. Or more accurately, indifference. Like looking at a photo of a place you once lived, but no longer recognize as home. She closed the app. And in that moment, with the cold light of Copenhagen streaming through her office window, Ilara Vance knew she had won the most important battle. The battle against her own past. Hey! If you're rooting for Ilara right now, if you feel her strength, do me a favor. Hit that like button. And if you want to see what happens when she finally returns to New York, make sure you've hit the subscribe and notifications button, because the climax is coming. Part 6. The Return and the Reckoning. 18 months after leaving New York, Ilara Vance returned to the city for work. Big had won the bid to design a new cultural complex in Hudson Yards, and she was the lead project architect. The client meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday. Ilara arrived with a presentation that was flawless. Sustainability data that would make any environmental committee weep with joy, and a quiet confidence that didn't need to raise its voice to be heard. The panel included city officials, businessmen, and, in an irony that couldn't have been scripted better, Lucien Rebel. His investment fund was one of the project's key financiers. Ilara saw him before he saw her. He was still handsome, but there was something diminished about him, a tension in his shoulders, wrinkles around his eyes etched by stress. When their eyes met, Lucien paled. "Ilara!" His voice was strangled. "Mr. Rabel," she acknowledged with a polite nod, treating him like any other stakeholder. "A pleasure to see you again." Her presentation was perfect. She spoke of bioclimatic design, urban integration, and financial projections that made sustainability seem not just ethical, but profitable. The panel, metaphorically, gave her a standing ovation. Lucien said nothing. He just stared at her as if she were a ghost, or worse, as if she were what he let go. After the meeting, he caught up to her in the lobby. "Ilara, wait, can we talk? Coffee?" She evaluated him. She saw the man she once loved, now appearing as a stranger, dressed in the skin of a memory. "I don't have time, Lucien. My flight leaves in 3 hours. Please, just 10 minutes. I owe you at least a conversation." She considered her options. She could walk away. But there was a small, curious part of her that wanted to hear what this man, her first great love and her first great lesson, had to say. 10 minutes. At the coffee shop across the street. "You look incredible," Lucien began, desperation in his tone. The desperation of someone realizing they made an irreversible mistake. "Thank you. I'm doing what I do." "Architecture." Lucien stirred his coffee without tasting it. "Ilara, what happened between us? The way it ended. I've thought about it a lot, and I regret it. Profoundly." "Go on." "Chloe and I didn't work. We divorced 3 months ago. It turned out that having the right last name wasn't enough when there was zero real connection, zero love." He waited for her to react. Satisfaction, compassion, something. She took a sip of her espresso. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is that all? I thought maybe, I don't know, we could talk, reconnect. You and I had something special." Ilara placed her cup down with a small, definitive clink. "We had something unbalanced. I loved you. You loved what I represented, a bohemian phase before you met your class obligations. And when those expectations called, you discarded me like clothes you no longer needed. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." Her voice held no anger, only clarity. "And you know what's the most ironic thing, Lucien? You did me a favor. You forced me to discover something I never would have learned with you. That my worth doesn't depend on being chosen. It depends on choosing myself every damn day." Lucien looked defeated. "Is there no chance?" "No." The word was soft, but absolute. "You are my past, Lucien, and I don't live there anymore." She stood up, left a $20 bill on the table, and before walking away, she allowed herself one final observation. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but it is not me. I will never be me again." Part 7. A new architecture of love and legacy. At the airport, Ilara received a text from Petra, her former professor. "Someone wants to meet you. Damien Sorensen, Danish entrepreneur, renewable energy sector, looking for a lead architect for his new sustainable city project in the south of Spain. He thinks you're perfect. Interested?" Ilara did a quick search. Damien Sorensen, 42, founder of a green technology company valued in the billions. A direct competitor of several firms Lucien Rebel had invested in. Ilara smiled. "Very interested," she texted back. "Schedule the meeting." 3 months later, Ilara was back in New York. But this time, she wasn't alone. Damien Sorensen was exactly what she didn't know she needed. A man who valued competence over pedigree. Their first meeting had been a work session that extended 7 hours. They discussed design, philosophy, and the future of architecture. "I'm not looking for a yes person," he'd warned her. "I'm looking for someone who tells me when I'm wrong. Someone with their own vision." "Then you're going to hate me," Ilara countered. "Because your initial proposal for the sustainable city is technically impressive but emotionally cold. Architecture isn't just efficiency, it's built emotion." Damien stared at her. Then he smiled. "You're hired, and we are going to design something extraordinary." The attraction between them was slow, built on mutual respect and genuine admiration. Not the romantic tornado Lucien had been, but something solid, architectural. 6 months later, they were back in New York, presenting the Sustainable City project to investors. The event was at the Mandarin Oriental, overlooking Central Park. Elara wore a structured dress that moved like architecture over her skin. Lucienne and Chloe were present. When Elara and Damien walked in together, there was a moment of collective recognition. The symmetry was too perfect. Elara spoke for 40 minutes. She showed renders of a city that breathed sustainability without sacrificing beauty. When she finished, a standing ovation. Damien kissed her temple. "You are brilliant," he whispered. "I know," she replied, smiling. Lucienne approached afterward. "Congratulations. The presentation was stunning." He looked at Damien, who was talking with investors a few feet away. "So, you and Sorensen—" "Yes, it's serious." Elara could have rubbed her happiness, her success, everything she had built, in his face. Instead, she said something far more devastating. "It's enough, Lucienne, and that is all I need to know." She walked away toward her life, leaving Lucienne Rebel as what he had always been, a necessary lesson on her path to becoming the woman she was destined to be. Part 8. The Foundation of Self-Love. 2 years later, Elara Vance and Damien Sorensen married in a small ceremony in Copenhagen. No French chateau, no endless guest lists, just 50 people who truly mattered. During their vows, Damien said, "I love you not for completing me, but for challenging me, for being so brilliant that you force me to be better every day." And Elara responded, "I love you for seeing my strength and never being afraid of it, but for building with me, not on top of me." The story was never about revenge. The story was about a woman who fell so low she hit rock bottom, who decided that the bottom was only the starting point for a new construction. She learned that self-love is not selfishness, it is architecture. It requires solid foundations, a clear structure, and the courage to let light in without fear of vulnerability. Elara designed the life she wanted, brick by brick, decision by decision. And when she looked back, she saw not failure, but metamorphosis. The silent power of a woman who refused to stay broken. There is a lie we are told, that our worth depends on being chosen by the right man, the right job, the right social circle. But the truth, the one Elara learned through fire, is that our worth depends on choosing ourselves. Every day, every decision, every time we fall and choose to rise, not out of pride, but out of respect for ourselves. And when you finally look in the mirror, not the broken one, but the new one you installed with your own hands, you will see something extraordinary. A woman who didn't need anyone to save her, because she learned to save herself. And that, in the end, is the only rescue that is truly worthwhile. Final call to action. If Elara's story inspired you to start your own Reconstruction Plan 2.0, comment below with the word rebuild. I read every single comment. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear this story of strength. Thank you for watching. Part 9. The Spanish Sun and the Steel Test. The Spanish Sun and the Steel Test. 3 years into their marriage, Elara and Damien's life was a meticulously planned structure, balanced between their Vesterbro apartment in Copenhagen and the constant global travel their business demanded. The foundation of their relationship wasn't romance, but a shared, almost fanatical devotion to the idea that architecture could genuinely change the world. Their new venture, the Horizon Project, a massive sustainable residential and tech hub planned for the coast of Andalusia, Spain, was now entering the critical phase. It was meant to be Elara's masterpiece, the physical manifestation of everything she had learned since the collapse of her old life in New York. A city that didn't just use green tech, but was structurally symbiotic with its environment. The site, a sun-drenched expanse overlooking the Mediterranean, was ironically beautiful. It was close enough to Barcelona's elite circles to feel the proximity of her past, yet geographically distant enough to be truly hers. The challenge wasn't technical. Ilara's designs were flawless. The challenge was political and financial. "The local government wants faster returns, Ilara," Damien explained one evening over a secure video call, the urgency in his voice cutting through the 7-hour time difference. "They're being heavily lobbied by traditional construction interests. They keep citing the risk of our circular economy models." Ilara rubbed her temples. "Risk. The only risk is their outdated model. We proved in the Oslo project that low-energy design is a higher long-term return. This is about control, Damien. Someone is feeding them doubt. Who do you think is trying to sabotage Ilara's work? Is it a former competitor, or perhaps someone we've met before? Share your theory below." That someone revealed themselves subtly. It was during a major investor summit in Madrid. Ilara was mid-presentation, passionately explaining the bioclimatic strategy, when a man in the back row began to interrupt with calculated, aggressive questions designed to undermine her financial projections. Ms. Vance, the man, whose badge identified him as Sebastian Thorn, head of a powerful German private equity fund, pressed, "While your vision is inspiring, your reliance on unproven modular construction for 60% of the housing strikes us as excessively risky, especially when a reliable firm like relatable Group Investments could provide guaranteed traditional financing and development." The air went instantly cold. relatable Group Investments, Lucien's firm. Ilara felt a familiar, metallic taste of betrayal, but this time it wasn't personal. It was strictly business. Lucien was not there, but his influence, his name, his network, was the ghost attempting to derail her life's work. Ilara didn't skip a beat. She set down her presentation clicker, locked eyes with Thorn, and smiled. Not with warmth, but with the cool precision of a newly sharpened tool. "Mr. Thorn, thank you for bringing up tradition. We respect tradition, which is why we value transparency. My designs are not unproven. They are the most awarded methodologies in Scandinavia right now. As for guaranteed financing, if you examine the fine print of the relatable Group's proposal, which I have, you'll find they are demanding exclusive rights to the energy grid we are building, effectively turning a community asset into a private profit center. Our model keeps the grid municipal. The risk, sir, is not in sustainable design. It is in old-world thinking that disguises control as stability." The investors around Thorn shifted uncomfortably. Ilara's delivery wasn't emotional. It was clinical, hitting him with data points that dismantled his attack. She had learned to speak the language of power better than Lucien ever had. The following weeks were a brutal escalation. The relatable Group, operating through proxies and shell companies, began a targeted campaign. They inflated the cost of local land acquisition, published doubt-sowing op-eds in Spanish financial papers, and even attempted to lure away her lead structural engineer with an exorbitant offer. "He's not just competing, Ilara," Damien warned her after analyzing the latest financial maneuvering. "He's trying to bury the Horizon project. He sees this as a zero-sum game. Then we will show him that a clean fight is a profitable one," Ilara stated, her voice hardening. "Call in the favor with the Swedish pension fund. We need an injection of capital that makes us too big to fail, and we need it before the next council vote. Subscribe to stay tuned. The stakes are too high for Ilara to lose this fight. If you're ready for the showdown, leave A in the comments." The council vote was set for the following Monday. It was a make-or-break moment. Without the local council's full approval, the project could be delayed for years, bleeding capital and credibility. Ilara and Damien knew they were facing a well-funded, calculated attack, driven by old grudges and even older greed. On the night before the vote, Ilara couldn't sleep. She sat on her apartment balcony in Marbella, watching the lights of the distant fishing boats. She was no longer the fragile woman who had wept in a Chelsea studio. She was a CEO, an architect, a force. But the lingering scent of past humiliation still whispered, "What if they were right? What if your dreams are too big for this world?" She pulled out her laptop and opened the initial sketch of the Horizon project. The building wasn't just concrete and steel, it was her defiance, her reconstructed self. A soft knock came at the door. Damien stood there, holding 2 glasses of Spanish red wine. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his gray eyes reading her perfectly. "He's in my head, Damien. Lucienne. Not the man, but the principle, the entitlement, the feeling that pedigree always wins over purpose." Damien handed her a glass. "Elara, look at me." He took her hands, his grip firm and grounding. "Lucien Rebel measures success by how much he can take. We measure it by how much we can build. He is a ghost from a past you transcended. Tomorrow, you don't fight him. You fight for the future you promised to yourself. You are not his anecdote. You are his legacy of regret." She smiled, a genuine, deep smile that reached her eyes. "You're right. And if we lose the vote?" "We don't lose," Elara said, taking a sip of the wine, the taste rich and complex. "We rebuild the strategy, but we start with a win." Part 10. The Vote and the Counter-Strike. The Vote and the Counter-Strike. The Andalusian Council chamber was a small theater of tension. It was Monday morning, and the final vote on the Horizon project's zoning and infrastructure investment was about to begin. The room was packed with local business owners, environmental activists, and a phalanx of silent, well-dressed observers, the proxies for the big financial players. Elara and Damien sat side by side. Elara was impeccably dressed, her posture radiating controlled calm. Damien, beside her, looked relaxed, but Elara could feel the tension in his knee occasionally tapping against hers, a private signal that the financial battlefield was hotter than they let on. She knew the odds. Sebastian Thorne and the Rabel Group's pressure campaign had been effective, swaying several key swing votes with promises of safer traditional investment and veiled threats of moving large capital elsewhere. The council members, old and rooted in local politics, looked nervous. They valued the visibility of a project like Horizon, but they feared the instability threatened by the powerful, unseen forces of European finance. The mayor, a gray-haired woman named Carmen, called the meeting to order. The debate lasted 2 agonizing hours. Elara spoke one last time, abandoning the technical slides for pure persuasion. "You have seen the numbers," she stated, her voice clear and strong in the small room. "But this is not about numbers. It is about legacy. Are you willing to mortgage your grandchildren's environment for a temporary boost in your budget? The Rabel Group's proposal offers speed. We offer future-proofing. When the world asks where Spain chose to lead, let the answer be here, at the Horizon Project." She ended on a firm note and sat down. Then, Sebastian Thorne, Lucien's chief proxy, stood up. His intervention was sharp, designed to sow final, critical doubt. "Madam Mayor, esteemed council," Thorne began, his tone dripping with faux respect. "Ms. Vance's vision is poetic, but poetry does not pay infrastructure bills. The truth is, Mr. Rabel's partners have presented an alternative financing package that is $50 million less risky for the city. We have a guaranteed commitment from a major Swiss bank. With all due respect, Ms. Vance's big Sorensen team is talented, but they are relatively new to the specifics of the Andalusian market. We cannot risk a groundbreaking project on their learning curve." He looked directly at Elara, a fleeting, triumphant smirk crossing his face. The mayor prepared to call the vote. The tension was suffocating. Elara's hand instinctively reached for Damien's. Suddenly, Damien Sorensen, who had remained silent throughout the public debate, stood up. He didn't ask permission. His presence, tall and commanding, immediately drew every eye. "With all due respect, Mr. Thorne," Damien's voice, a deep resonance that carried the weight of billions, cut through the room. "I must correct you on one critical detail regarding your guaranteed financing." Thorne frowned, visibly annoyed. "Mr. Sorensen, this is a local council vote, not a private discussion." "It becomes a relevant discussion," Damien countered coolly, "when the stability of the financing you propose is, shall we say, suddenly compromised." He then pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. He spoke, not to the council, but to Thorne. "The Swiss bank commitment you cited, Mr. Thorne? I'm afraid my firm, Sorensen Green Tech, just initiated a hostile bid for their distressed renewable assets in Scandinavia, triggering an automatic regulatory freeze on all their new commitments in the EU. Your guaranteed financing, as of 3 minutes ago, is non-existent." The council chamber erupted into murmurs. Thorne turned beet red, pulling out his own phone, which immediately started vibrating furiously. "This is outrageous interference! Ray Bell will sue!" Thorne stammered, his polished facade cracking. Damien remained unflappable. "Mr. Thorne, this is not interference. This is market strategy. My business is built on foresight and aggressive asset control, something Mr. Rabel taught me to respect years ago when we competed for assets in the North Sea. He plays the game, I play it faster." He turned to the mayor and the council. "The alternative financing is gone, but my firm, as a gesture of confidence, is prepared to underwrite the full infrastructure bond, plus a $50 million contingency fund against any delays. This is clean money, Madam Mayor, with a proven track record. The choice is no longer between safe and risky. It is between a guarantee of success from us or a guarantee of endless litigation from the Rabel Group." The impact was immediate and devastating to Thorne's position. He had lost his leverage and, more importantly, his credibility. Mayor Carmen, a seasoned politician, wasted no time. She banged her gavel. "The alternative proposal is withdrawn due to sudden material changes in financing. Council, we vote on the Horizon Project proposal, as presented by Ms. Vance." The vote was a landslide. 7 votes in favor, 2 abstentions. Ilara felt the tension drain from her body. The victory was immense. It wasn't just about the project. It was about the validation that power, real power, comes from building, not breaking. Later that day, as the news broke across European business wires, Ilara and Damien stood on the balcony of their temporary apartment in Marbella, watching the Spanish sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. "You didn't tell me you were going to corner a Swiss bank?" Ilara whispered, half shocked, half admiring. "It was a last-minute tactical play. I learned a long time ago that in a fight against Lucien Rebel, you don't fight his pawns, you target his queen," Damien said, wrapping his arms around her. "Besides, I knew the real asset was you. I just had to clear the field." Ilara leaned into him. She knew that Damien's act was the ultimate demonstration of his faith in her. Not the fleeting romantic love Lucien had offered, but the deep, shared commitment to standing shoulder to shoulder against the world. Her phone chimed. It was an email from an unknown address, but the content was unmistakable. A single line from Lucien Rebel, sent perhaps from a distant boardroom, now witnessing his own defeat. "Congratulations, Ilara. You built quite the fortress." Ilara didn't reply. She didn't have to. She deleted the email. Lucien was no longer a ghost in her head. He was a footnote in her increasingly impressive biography. The real structure she had built was not in Andalusia, but within herself. Final call to action. What do you think of Damien's counterstrike? Was it genius or too ruthless? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want to know what happens when Ilara runs into Chloe, Lucien's ex-wife, at a global summit, Be sure to hit the notification bell. Part 11. Ghosts in the Global Arena. Hosts in the Global Arena. The Horizon project in Andalusia was now well underway. A triumph of sustainable engineering and resilient vision. Elara and Damien's joint venture, Sorensen Vance Architecture, SVA, was fast becoming a global leader in green urban development. Their reputation, built on integrity and groundbreaking design, allowed them to choose their battles, and more importantly, choose their partners. 6 months after the pivotal vote in Spain, Elara was attending the World Urban Forum in Geneva, a high-profile summit bringing together architects, urban planners, and global investors. SVA was presenting their next major initiative, a plan to redevelop neglected port areas into vibrant, climate-resilient communities. Elara was in her element, moving through the bustling conference hall with an ease that bespoke true mastery of her field. She was giving an impromptu interview to a panel of journalists when her gaze drifted across the room and landed on a familiar face. Chloe Beaumont. She was across the crowded hall, surrounded by what looked like a media scrum, her elegant blonde hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon. Chloe, once the epitome of Lucien's preferred social circle, now had a different aura. There was a quiet intensity about her, a focus that Elara hadn't seen during their brief, devastating encounter years ago. Elara felt a flicker of something, not resentment, but a strange, distant curiosity. The woman who had, through no fault of her own, been the catalyst for Elara's greatest pain, was now simply another powerful woman in the global arena. As her interview wrapped up, Elara made her way towards the coffee station, strategically placing herself to observe. Chloe was now talking to a group of female tech entrepreneurs, her gestures animated, her voice clear and authoritative, even from a distance. What do you think Elara should do? Avoid Chloe or approach her? And if she approaches, what should she say? Share your thoughts below. Suddenly, Chloe turned, her eyes scanning the room, and she saw Elara. For a split second, a flash of recognition, and perhaps surprise, crossed Chloe's face. Then, to Elara's astonishment, Chloe gave a small, polite nod, almost an acknowledgement, before turning back to her conversation. Elara, now armed with the confidence that had been forged in fire, decided against avoidance. The past was past, but an opportunity for a different kind of closure, perhaps, presented itself. She calmly walked towards Chloe's group. As Elara approached, Chloe excused herself from her conversation, a slight smile playing on her lips. Elara Vance, isn't it? Chloe said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, professional. It's been a long time. Chloe Beaumont. Indeed, Elara replied, matching her tone. It's good to see you. Thriving. Chloe chuckled, a soft, self-deprecating sound. Thriving is a generous word. Rebuilding, I'd say. Much like yourself, I imagine. Elara raised an eyebrow. Rebuilding? Yes. Chloe gestured towards a nearby, quieter corner of the hall. Could we, for a moment? They moved away from the main crowd, the ambient hum of the forum acting as a backdrop to their unexpected conversation. I started my own impact investment fund, Chloe explained, her gaze direct, focusing on sustainable urban tech. My family's name opened doors, yes, but it took a disastrous marriage to realize that having the right name doesn't mean you're actually building anything of substance. Elara listened, a knot in her stomach slowly loosening. This wasn't the triumphant, pitying Chloe from all those years ago. This was a woman who sounded, surprisingly, vulnerable and earnest. Lucien and I, we were a partnership of convenience for our families, Chloe continued, her voice tinged with a weariness Elara understood. We both knew it, but neither of us had the courage to admit it until, Well, until the whole messy divorce became unavoidable. He wanted pedigree. I wanted a platform. We thought we could get both. She paused, taking a breath. I saw the news about your Horizon project. It's truly impressive, Alara. And I saw how Lucian tried to sabotage it. He tries, Alara corrected quietly. He doesn't succeed. No, he doesn't, Chloe conceded. He underestimated you. We all did, in his circle. I suppose I was as blinded by the right name as he was. She looked at Alara, her gray eyes holding a genuine, unsettling honesty. I never apologized for what happened. Not directly. I regret my part in it, even if it was passive. You deserved better, and I wish I had seen then what I see now. That true value is built, not inherited. Alara was stunned. She had prepared herself for polite disdain, for subtle superiority, for anything but this raw, unexpected candor. She searched Chloe's face for any trace of artifice, but found none. It was a sincere apology. Years in the making. A small, quiet peace settled over Alara. The ghost of Chloe Beaumont, the woman she had once resented as a symbol of everything she wasn't, dissolved. In her place was another woman, navigating her own path of reconstruction. Thank you, Chloe, Alara said, her voice softer than she intended. That means a lot. It should, Chloe replied, a faint smile returning. Because it's true. Listen, I'm actually looking for partners on a new initiative, repurposing abandoned industrial zones in Eastern Europe for green housing. It's ambitious, and it needs architects who understand both sustainability and social impact. I've been following SVA's work. Would you consider a conversation? Alara looked at Chloe, a woman who once represented the very forces that tried to break her. And now, she was offering a hand. Not in competition, but in collaboration, on terms of mutual respect and shared vision. The irony was almost poetic. I would consider it, Alara said, a strategic gleam entering her eyes. My schedule is tight, but if you send over the brief, Damien and I will take a look. We're always open to genuinely impactful projects. Chloe's smile broadened. Genuine, and so excellent. I'll be in touch. As Chloe walked back to her group, a lightness settled in Alara's chest. It wasn't just the potential for a new business venture. It was the profound realization that her journey of self-reconstruction had not only rebuilt her, but had also, unexpectedly, transformed the very landscape of her past. She had not sought revenge, but she had achieved something far more powerful: redemption and respect, even from those who had once represented her greatest pain. What do you think of this unexpected alliance? Could Alara and Chloe become powerful allies? Let me know your predictions in the comments. And if you want to see what happens when Lucian Rebel hears about this, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on. Part 12. Lucien's Echoes of Regret. Lucien's Echoes of Regret. Lucien Rebel had always prided himself on controlling the narrative. He was a master puppeteer, moving assets, reputations, and people to serve his meticulously crafted life plan. But in the 3 years since Alara Vance had walked out of his penthouse, his control had fractured. His marriage to Chloe Beaumont had dissolved into a bitter, expensive settlement, leaving him with an emotional void and a slight but noticeable dip in his public standing. His attempts to sabotage the Horizon project had not only failed, but had resulted in his firm, Relatable Group, being publicly sidelined by the Sorensen-Vance architecture powerhouse. A stinging defeat delivered by Damien Sorensen's brutal financial counterstrike. Lucien was in his London office, staring out at the perpetually gray sky, when the alert hit his private terminal. It was a market intelligence report, flagged high priority by his analysis team. The headline was stark: Chloe Beaumont's Impact Fund in talks with SVA on Eastern European Green Port Initiative. Lucien felt a punch of disbelief, followed by a surge of pure agonizing fury. He read the details twice. Ilara Vance, Chloe Beaumont, working together. The two women who had, in different ways, been the keys to the world he craved, were now aligning their formidable intellect and capital, creating a force exponentially more powerful than he could contain. The irony was a bitter, metallic taste in his mouth. He snatched up his phone and immediately dialed Sebastian Thorne, his head of European operations, the very man Ilara had humiliated in the Andalusian council chamber. "Thorne, what the hell is this market intel?" Lucien's voice was low, dangerous. Thorne, clearly used to Lucien's rages, responded carefully. "It's accurate, sir. Our contacts confirmed that Ms. Vance and Ms. Beaumont had a prolonged, apparently cordial discussion at the Geneva Forum. Beaumont's new fund is capital-heavy and needs SVA's architectural credibility for ESG alignment. It's a perfect strategic match, regardless of past history." "Past history is everything, Thorne. Chloe wouldn't partner with her. I told Chloe everything. I painted Vance as an ambitious provincial opportunist." Thorne sighed, the sound barely audible. "Sir, with respect, the market doesn't care about the history you painted. It cares about SVA's performance on Horizon. Ms. Beaumont is making a cold, calculated, and frankly brilliant move. This partnership will give her fund access to projects previously unattainable." Lucien slammed his fist on the desk. He hadn't just lost Ilara. He had handed her the ultimate power by pushing her toward the success that now commanded even his ex-wife's respect. He had created the very monster that was now eclipsing him. Later that evening, fueled by expensive scotch and simmering regret, Lucien did something he hadn't done in years. He typed Ilara Vance's name into a messaging app that was entirely encrypted, a channel he'd once used only for the most delicate business deals. He didn't want business supports. He wanted to know. "LR, I saw the news. Chloe, you're taking on Eastern Europe." He waited, heart pounding, for an agonizing 45 minutes. Just as he was about to delete the message and pretend the lapse in control never happened, he received a reply. It wasn't verbose. It wasn't emotional. It was a single, devastating sentence. "Evie, I am. It's a compelling project. I'm glad you finally appreciate the value of true vision, Lucien. You should have focused less on last names." The use of his name, Lucien, felt clinical, dissecting him. It was a confirmation that she was completely untouched by his existence. He wasn't even a worthy rival anymore. He was a cautionary tale. He wrote a reply, something about missing her, about how their love was real beneath the superficiality. But his finger hovered over the delete button. He knew the words were hollow. He knew she wouldn't believe him. Most painfully, he knew he didn't even believe himself anymore. The irony of his life now was crushing. He was the man with the powerful name, the vast wealth, yet he was utterly alone, watching the two most important women in his life, the one he loved and the one he needed, build a future together, completely without him. Lucien Rebel had always sought to be the center of the universe. Now, he was watching a magnificent new solar system form, and he was nothing more than cold, discarded debris, orbiting too far away to matter. The true cost of his youthful arrogance wasn't the loss of a woman, but the loss of his own relevancy. He slowly deleted the unsent message. There was nothing left to say. Final thoughts. The unspoken epilogue. The epilogue, Ilara knew, wasn't written in grand public announcements, but in the quiet, decisive actions of her daily life. She didn't seek to destroy Lucien. She sought to outbuild him. And in doing so, she rendered him irrelevant. She was now standing on the site of the Horizon project, watching the first prefabricated, low-carbon residential units being lifted into place, a tangible structure of her defiance. Damien was beside her, discussing logistics. "We have the initial meeting with Chloe's team next week in Berlin," Damien said, looking down at her. "She's impressive, Ilara. She's learned the game." "She has," Ilara agreed, slipping her hand into his. "We all learn, don't we? Some of us, unfortunately, have to learn the hardest lessons." She looked out at the construction site, then up at the clear Andalusian sky. Her life was no longer defined by the cold marble of a New York penthouse or the anxiety of class difference. It was defined by light, by connection, and by the undeniable truth that she was a woman who had saved herself, and in doing so, had built a legacy that would stand long after the echoes of one man's regret had faded away. Final call. That's the end of Lucienne's chapter. If this story of resilience and self-worth resonated with you, let me know your favorite part in the comments. And don't forget to share the ultimate story of the architect's vengeance.